It's round 3 here at Grand Prix Detroit. TJ Rogers joined by Jake Van Lunen, and we are going to be kicking things off with Table B, which is going to be Martin Yuza up against Max Magnussen. This is that Affinity deck that we were just talking about, and it is up against Hollow One. It's going to be an Inkmoth Nexus into an Ornithopter. Nice old school Ornithopter coming down.
Yeah, Antiquities, very pretty there.
It's funny that the Antiquities is already on the battlefield. Maybe some foreshadowing to that card we were talking about.
Yes. It looks like Max may have mulliganed quite a bit here.
Oof. With a deck like Affinity, that does really feel like a punishing situation.
Yeah, it's one of those decks where you really want a hand that's as explosive as possible, and a turn 1 Ornithopter. We'll have to see how things pan out in turn 2, but it's not looking like the best start ever for Max.
It's going to be a Street Wraith cycle from Martin Yuza, followed up by a Faithless Looting. We're going to discard a Flamewake Phoenix. That's going to be able to come back from the graveyard as a 2/2 that must attack, but that's okay because it wants to.
Yeah, this is going to be quite the turn 1 here for Martin.
I see you're looking at what's on the left side of that hand, right?
I am, yes.
Oh, let's see it. It's going to be double Hollow One, the 4/4s right off the bat. There they are. It's a 5-mana 4/4, but anytime that you cycle or discard a card reduces their casting cost by 2, and they are now out on the battlefield. Max, he's playing Affinity. He's used to being the one with the fastest board on the battlefield, and now he's looking down these 2 4/4s, and to add insult to injury, they're artifacts.
Yeah, I mean, Hollow 2 is a pretty good start.
All right, there's the attack in for 10 on 2. It's a Signal Pest and an Ornithopter. How often do you get to see 2 creatures attack for 1 damage where it mattered that they both attack? That's just going to be a quick pickup. That could not have gone faster. We were in before 2 minutes.
Yeah, that was somewhat explosive, I would say. Whew. This Hollow One deck has some of the best turn 1s we've ever seen from a deck that is not like a traditional try to kill you on turn 1 all-in glass cannon type of strategy.
Let's jump in. We're able to get into the beginning of another one. It's going to be Corey Baumeister up against Matt King Johnson. It's the Tron fight, and it looks like we've got actually Tron assembled really on both sides. One of them with a Walking Ballista on 3 on Matt's side of the battlefield, and he is up against Corey, who is going to try and respond in kind with a Dismember. This is one of those really important sideboard cards that we were talking about. Something that does not have an enormous amount of conflict with the remainder of this deck. You know, maybe Martin Yuza would ever want it, but really Dismember, it's pretty free. It's in this Tron deck. It's pretty happy. It's going to take down the Walking Ballista and be followed up by Karn Liberated. Big card in this match?
Huge card. The fact that this can exile Tron pieces makes it exceptionally important here.
Now, here's the consideration. Did not go for the tower. Is there going for the power plant, I believe, or is that the mine?
I believe that's the mine.
That is the mine. That's
yes.
right. Goes for the mine instead. Interesting consideration. Oftentimes, you know, the conventional wisdom is to attack the tower.
Yeah, I think which land you go after is largely dependent on the order in which your opponent plays the lands. Sometimes different people do that in different orders. So there we see an extra tower. So Corey would have actually gotten punished if he went after that. A lot of the time, if your opponent uses a card like Expedition Map or Sylvan Scrying to find a particular piece of Tron, then you know that they likely only have one piece. Or one of that piece. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you go after that one.
And we did jump into this game partway through. It is possible that somewhere in that graveyard there was another card that we saw. So maybe he knew that there was a second tower, something like that. Looks like we're going to go ahead and just eliminate this Karn, take it down another one of these Tron pieces. We are now at only 2 towers.
The 2 towers. Not looking great against what Corey has going on here. Now Corey with access to, what is that, 12 mana?
Oh,
okay,
no.
Yeah.
Okay, Emrakul the Promised End, and I think that promise was to this game.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. This looks like we are approaching towards the end of the first game here. It's Emrakul the Promised End, the 13-13. It's got flying, and when it enters the battlefield, we are going to control Matt King Johnson's next turn. He gets another one after that, but the amount of destruction that you can do in a situation like that is lofty.
Yeah, now Corey can use this Field of Ruin to attack Matt's mana base if he wants to. He has, he just has the ability to play Matt's hand for Matt. And one of the reasons why Corey chose to play one of this card is because he felt that having a single copy of this in his deck increased his match win percentage against the blue-white decks by over 10%. And he felt like 10% was too much to leave on the table for just a single card inclusion.
One thing to keep in mind is that we likely won't see that Field of Ruin actually get used. The way that the card is written, it actually requires that it goes for a non-basic land that your opponent controls.
Oh, you're right.
So he would
absolutely.
He would not be able to play that down, destroy one of these towers, and then fail to find. But, in a situation like this, maybe your best option is just to do nothing.
Yeah, and I think doing nothing is what we can expect here.
He's got 2 copies of that Chromatic Star, but not too much of that. Yeah, that's going to be the case. We do have Emrakul the Promised End. It is still going to be the biggest, baddest flyer on the board, and it is unlikely to get contested. It's got protection from instants for whatever that, matters in this matchup, which is little. That's King Johnson. He is... I don't quite know what the combination of cards is that makes this happen, because you're about to take a hit for 13. Assembling Tron, you are 2 turns away from that.
Yeah, now, Matt, if he's able to find that last piece of Tron, will have access to 10 mana. He does have this Ulamog in hand. So if Corey does not interact with Matt's mana base, and Matt is able to find that power plant in the following turn, then he could fight his way back into this game.
Ooh, and he would have to get that right off the top.
Yes.
Oh, man. That'd be the kind of moment. Those are the moments that I look forward to. Just against all odds, you're facing it down, and then just to grab the one card that you need right off the top. A lot of mana available on Corey's side of the field. Still that 13-13, and he's not going to let that be. He wants to build this board up even more. Let's cycle a Relic of Progenitus. That is going to get rid of both graveyards. You see him tap one of those singular lands because he has the mine, the power plant, and the tower. That does tap for 2 mana. 1 mana to play it, another mana to crack the Relic of Progenitus. Looks like it might be an 8 mana play into Ugin the Spirit Dragon. That's not going to interact with the mana base. Let's see it. Last Tron land off the top.
Yeah, well, it looks like Corey has a Walking Ballista in hand, so I don't even know if it matters, but it could make for an exciting moment at the very least.
I don't think he ended up finding it. We're just going to pick it up. Corey Baumeister going to lock up his first game win here in the 3rd round. He is going to join Martin Yuza. So those 2 players both really ahead of the game. No other game wins across the board right now.
Yeah, 8 minutes in, and Martin and Corey's already have 2 game wins. They have to be feeling pretty good about this.
Yeah, especially, in these team events, the clock is definitely more of a factor than it would be usually when you have the opportunity to kind of consult your teammates, ask them for advice. We're jumping into table A, though, so I'm going to give the quick breakdown on that side. Right side, it's nice and easy. There's a Meddling Mage. You see that card on it. It's naming Terminus. So we cannot cast Terminus as long as that's on the battlefield. On the left side, we have got Jace the Mind Sculptor with 5 counters, a Search for Azcanta, which is taking a look at the top card right now, throwing that into the bin, and we have got Snapcaster Mage, which appears to have used a... So we are going to go for the Terminus here, but we can't cast it. So that is on the battlefield. I think he just got a little bit mixed up there with he was going to be putting that on the bottom of his library. Can't cast it, does reveal it off of the Miracle Trigger, and then nothing comes of it. But now, maybe that's intimidation factor.
Yeah, maybe showing Sam that Terminus just so that Sam knows that he basically is finding himself in a really, really rough situation.
There is the Teferi currently in hand, which could actually get rid of that Meddling Mage, as could Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, and once you get rid of that, you don't even really want to cast your Terminus.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's going to be Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Now, these 2 cards, Teferi and Jace, they recently became best friends.
Yeah, they're very close friends. Oh, I might even say that they're super friends. When you have both of them on the battlefield, you feel like an invulnerable force. And your opponent feels like, they're trying to beat a brick wall in a fist fight.
Not something that you would normally think when you're looking at two mages, that one of them's all about illusions, the other one's all about time, but they certainly put up a wall. That is going to be game 1 to Corey Burkhart. Just there's not a whole lot of fighting against that when you've only got your one creature. We're going to jump on over. It's back to table B. It's Affinity versus Hollow One, and now we have got an Etched Champion. Protection from all colors as long as you control 3 artifacts. There are exactly 3 currently. That Mox Opal is potentially vulnerable right now. Also notable, that protection from all colors does not apply to the Hollow Ones.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing here. Etched Champion has traditionally done really well against these sort of Jundi, Thoughtseize type decks because they have such trouble getting it off the battlefield. But when you're playing against these Hollow One strategies, the card becomes pretty weak because they have these 4/4s that they cast for very little mana, and those cards don't care at all about protection from all colors.
Yep, something that used to come up. Really, the only time that you ever had to worry about that beforehand was either in the mirror or against something like a Mutavault from Merfolk. So it's going to be a Cranial Plating that comes down, and we are leaving up 2 mana right now, potentially for this Blinkmoth Nexus.
Yeah, and Blinkmoth Nexus can target itself with its ability. It's not something that can come up right now, but later on, that's an important note that it can give itself +1/+1 and effectively trade with Phoenixes. Right now, not enough mana to do that, but
yeah, the Blinkmoth and the Inkmoth, Inky and Blinky, the Blinkmoth Nexus, you can pay 1 mana to turn it into a 1/1 flying artifact creature.
Yep.
It's also got one other ability, which is pay 1 and tap it to give target Blinkmoth creature +1/+1.
Yeah.
The Inkmoth Nexus does not have that second ability, but the first one is that it becomes a 1/1 still Blinkmoth flying creature with Infect.
yeah, and with a card like Cranial Plating, that means that a card like Inkmoth Nexus can potentially end the game very quickly.
And we are going to see that Blinkmoth Nexus activated here. There is 10 damage swinging in a block, and it's going to be a Terminate that eliminates that one from the field. Now it is Etched Champion if it's going to block it, or you go to 1. Martin uses very likely running Lightning Bolts in his deck. You can even see one of them in the graveyard, no others, which means that going down to 1 is a very risky position to put yourself into. But what else is there really to be done? We're in a post-board matchup, but Magnussen is really looking at a Cranial Plating and an Inkmoth Nexus, and the top card isn't going to do it. That is going to be picking up, and Martin Yuza locks up the first match win of the 3 with 37 minutes left on the clock. These are 2 decks that were very prepared. These players are not planning on missing lunch.
No, they are not. Martin Juza, I imagine, had spent more time shuffling since he sat down than he did actually playing Magic.
Apparently that went pretty well because the variance ended up in his favor. We saw a couple of times that we had 2 Hollow Ones on the battlefield. That's right where you want to be. So, Matt King Johnson up against Corey Baumeister. It's back to the Tron mirror, the big mana bash. And we are going to see Matt King Johnson on the play. Now, these are 2 decks that are very much racing to get 7 mana on turn 3. Is this a situation where being the first player with a Karn is the more ideal situation, or possibly being kind of the follow-up to use your Karn on theirs? Or is being the first one out of the gate just better in this?
So the vast majority of time being the first person out of the gate with it is just better. Mm-hmm. The fact is if you're using your Karn minus to get rid of an opposing Karn, they've likely already used a Karn to exile one of your lands. That means you needed doubles of the particular copy they exiled. So usually being the first player down with a Karn means that you're keeping your opponent off of Tron while protecting your own.
And we're going to see this Chromatic Star get cycled for a green mana, most likely. It's going to be followed up by a Chromatic Sphere. So far, a nice little mirror match. We saw Star on the right, Star on the left. A little bit of Tron land action. There's a Sphere, and we see redundant Tron pieces. Looks like a couple copies of Surgical Extraction in hand. We do know about the Field of Ruin that Matt King Johnson has access to. So he could end up combining a Field of Ruin alongside one of these Surgical Extractions to eliminate Tron from Corey Baumeister's deck.
Yeah, and Surgical Extraction, a very powerful tool here when in conjunction with land destruction spells. It means that you're able to prevent your opponent from ever assembling that Tron, which creates such a huge amount of mana.
And we see an Ancient Stirrings here. Corey already led on a forest. Neither one of these players is going to be achieving the fabled turn 3 Tron. And even looking at these 5 cards, I don't think there's another piece of Tron in it.
No, so Corey going to have to settle for an expedition map.
Well, at least he's ready for an adventure.
Oh, yeah. Now he knows where he has to go.
That's step 1. You know, knowing which way you're facing is among the more important steps in taking your first step.
I would agree with that.
And it's going to be a pass back. Oh, no.
So,
interesting that we didn't activate the map to find a third land.
Yeah, I'm also surprised by that. I'm trying to figure out what that could mean.
Maybe a warping whale, but I don't think that this is really the critical turn to try and save that.
Yeah, he could also be trying to protect that extra piece. He doesn't want to play another piece of Tron when he already has 2 mines in the battlefield, thus potentially giving Corey the ability to destroy it and then surgical. Maybe he has some way to protect against that, but it requires that he's able to have access to all of his mana on the same turn. I'm not really sure the contents of his hand.
We'll have to see what happens. Both of these decks faltering a little bit with their mana. We've got Baumeister, I think he's got another tower in hand. Both of these players kind of lined up with some redundant pieces of mana, and they're trying to find their way actually to what they're really trying to assemble. It's going to be another tower, and we've got the map. Here's the activation of the expedition map for Matt King Johnson. He's going to look through and find either tower or Field of Ruin. Oh, now that's a game plan.
Yeah, and this... So this is what Matt was going for. Matt now is going to use this Field of Ruin, and he doesn't want to use it this turn because there's already the second tower on the battlefield, but he can keep this Field of Ruin up, and when Corey plays his second piece of Tron, Matt can use this Field of Ruin to destroy it, and in doing so, he will then have a target for the surgical extraction that will prevent Corey from ever assembling Tron.
So it was part of the game plan then to actually pass intentionally and try and keep that sort of this secret, and actually he's going to go for the tower.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So he's going to grab a forest out of this. If he's got something like an Ancient Stirrings, he'll have the ability to also run that one through this turn. One of these towers now in the graveyard, but a surgical extraction on that tower in particular, not the best case scenario.
Yeah, Corey already has a tower on the battlefield, so if the surgical does happen on this tower, that would mean that Matt would need another way to destroy a land to permanently shut that off.
Ancient Stirrings might be looking for another copy of it, though. He just found a nice couple of those lands, so he will have 2 out of 3 pieces assembled. It's going to be back to Baumeister, who is going to be also running through his own expedition map. Finds another piece of it. This has been not quite the big mana bash that I expected, Jake.
Yeah, both players understand that the other person is going to be attacking their mana base. Post-sideboard, they're probably sideboarding in less expensive threats, things like Thought-Knot Seers, things like Thragtusk, understanding the texture of the matchup in post-boarded games where achieving Tron isn't just a normal occurrence as it is in a lot of matches.
Chromatic Sphere comes down to the battlefield and activates, probably going for green. It's not going to be relevant because Oblivion Stone is going to hit the battlefield. This is a 3-mana artifact. You can pay 5 mana, tap it, sacrifice it to destroy all non-land permanents without omen counters on it. Interestingly enough, also does have a way to put those Oblivion, it's a fate counter. I'm sorry, not an omen. It's a fate counter, and for 5 mana, you can put those onto a permanent. It is only 4 mana to activate it and destroy all the non-land permanents. I flipped those costs around in my mind. So 3 to play it, 4 to put counters, 5 to destroy everything.
Yes.
There we go. 5. There we go. 3, 4, 5. It's all counting up. Thought-Knot Seer comes down. Thragtusk. Karn liberated. Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Looks like Corey's going to be allowed to stay hungry.
Yeah, Corey, even with this third Tron piece here, 9 mana available, so 1 shy of being able to cast Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger this turn. I believe he drew an extra copy of Ulamog, so another card that could potentially end up dead here if Matt does have another copy of Field of Ruin.
He is looking pretty nice as far as assembling Tron, though.
Yeah, he can make Tron this turn.
He could do that and then play down a Thragtusk. He beats the Thought-Knot Seer in combat.
Yeah.
And he would have access to a Thragtusk next turn, even through a Field of Ruin.
That's true.
So it's going to be a 5 life gained. Corey goes up to 25. The kind of matchup this is, both players not taking a single point of damage yet. Their mana's not doing it. They're not really doing it to each other. This is a patient game. And we are going to attack in. Interesting consideration when trading with this card actually isn't a trade because he gets to draw the card.
Yeah, Matt may think that, with the Oblivion Stone there on the battlefields, might just be better to get the initial Thragtusk off the table before Corey starts putting Omen counters on things.
Oh, okay. Or even in a pinch if he has to activate the Oblivion Stone. It looks like he's just not seeing it. He knows the rest of that hand. He knows that the Ulamog is about to come down. There just were not any options for him. He knew it, and he offers the handshake. That means that Corey Baumeister is now, I think that was the second game of this match. I think that means he and Martin Yuza have locked it up.
Yeah, a very quick one here.
28 minutes remaining. What a little bit of a different dynamic than the last one, which went just down to the wire. So that is going to be Corey Baumeister in 2, Martin Yuza in 2, and unfortunately for the players on the right, there just wasn't a whole lot of action now. I think we might take a little bit of a look to see what is happening at Table 1. Not certain if that game is still occurring. You know, the players are there. Let's have some fun. We showed up to play. Nah, looks like they may have come to the same conclusion. There's 2 wins on our side, and that's just not the way it's going to go, unfortunately.
Take some time, have a cup of coffee, get ready.
True. That's true. It is right around noon at the moment. You know, it's a good time to go get yourself a snack, get ready for the back end of this tournament. So that is going to be the first match that we had here in round 3 at Grand Prix Detroit, and we have got Corey Baumeister one more step in his journey to try and lock up Platinum. It's certainly a lofty goal, but he's going to be fighting for it every step of the way.
He needs first place. Show up to one of these Grand Prix, and you need to get absolute first in order to accomplish your goal. That is a dream.
Yeah, that is absolutely a pretty lofty goal, and I think we might have a little bit extra happening down at the feature match, so we might get to see just a little bit more. It's going to be down and, ooh, okay. Looks like we might have the opportunity to just watch a little bit more Magic, see it happen down on the field, and see what we've got. All right, it looks like these 2 players, they didn't really get their time in the sun. This one is going to be a matchup where possibly one of my favorite defining factors of it for funsies.
Ooh, Magic is fun.
Magic is fun. It's a game. These players are having a good time. They're both good people. A lot of fun to talk to. They're not ready to quite pack up these decks in the deck boxes just yet. It's going to be a Hollowed Fountain coming down for Corey Burkhart.
And this is a matchup that I've played quite a bit over the last couple weeks. And while Humans is very capable of beating any deck in Modern, I do believe the blue-white deck to be favored. I think Terminus is just such a powerful card. And it's usually the game ender.
The combination of Terminus and Supreme Verdict, especially against a deck like that's running Meddling Mage, which is able to shut down some of those individual lines. Really powerful. We start off with a turn 1 Noble Hierarch. We are followed up by an Aether Vial and a Champion of the Parish. Not really in the order that you wanted it to be. You still have a 1/1 Champion of the Parish. The Aether Vial doesn't have a counter on it. The Noble Hierarch was, it was able to tap for mana. I guess that's the nice little bit. But normally you would want these 3 1 drops to be in a slightly different order.
Yeah, the Ancient Ziggurat kind of forced Sam's hand there. The Ancient Ziggurat cannot cast the Aether Vial, so Sam was forced to cast the Noble Hierarch on the first turn, and then on the second turn that Noble Hierarch was able to produce the mana necessary to actually cast the Aether Vial. And now Sam, with no additional lands, it may end up having a draw where he has trouble playing out all the cards.
And Detention Sphere comes down. It's got 3 good targets for it. One of them, the Aether Vial, if you notice that that Ancient Ziggurat has, yep, and that is going to be it. Back down to 1 mana and a Noble Hierarch to try and supplement that, as well as this Champion of the Parish. We drew into not quite enough. There's 2 Mantis Riders in hand, no way to actually get them on the battlefield. A Meddling Mage as well.
Yeah, Sam right now deciding whether or not he wants to produce more damage with a Thalia's Lieutenant or disrupt Corey with a Meddling Mage.
Champion of the Parish says that whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, you get a +1/+1 counter on it, so that's why we see that now. And that's going to attack in 4/2. This Meddling Mage looks to be on Supreme Verdict. So that is the 4 mana board wipe, white, white, blue, and a generic mana. Can't be countered, destroy all creatures.
That's correct.
Detention Sphere now hanging out, the lone non-land permanent at the moment. It's going to be another tapped land, and this is going to be a Search for Azcanta to supplement it. Not too worried about the damage just yet. That is going to be a really big card as this game goes forward in enabling some of the more powerful draws when you combine that with Teferi, with Miracle cards, with Jace. Also in Corey's hand right now, Baneslayer Angel, and Sam is about to know it.
Wow. Baneslayer Angel is just the coolest of all the cards. Does he have a Baneslayer?
I could have sworn that he did. Maybe I might have misseen. Oh, maybe it was like the Field of Ruin combined with the Path to Exile, and I just combined them both into an angel. Apparently. I'm an alchemist, you know?
Yeah, Baneslayer Angel, one of my favorite cards ever printed. Elegance of it.
How do you feel about that recently combining it with Lyra Dawnbringer in some cases, one of each?
Well, it makes Baneslayer Angel bigger and badder, so
You're for it.
I'm definitely for it.
All right, we've got Island, Field of Ruin, and Vendilion Click in the hand right now. Doesn't get to interact with any of those. We did end up using that Path to Exile on the Champion of the Parish before that Kitesail Freebooter came down to the battlefield, so that is going to be a 1/2 with flying, supplemented by this Meddling Mage and this Noble Hierarch. Corey finds himself down to 14. That Exalted from the Noble Hierarch means that it's an attack in for 3. Field of Ruin comes down to the battlefield.
And Sam, even though he has a much less impressive board and he's not really playing much out at this point, he still has to feel very good about his chances. He has 5 mana in play. He's at 14. Things are looking pretty bad for the aggressor when the control opponent has this type of board set up.
It's time for the Mantis Rider. Here's going to be an interesting consideration for me. The Vendilion Click can come down, it can trade with the Mantis Rider. But at this stage in the game, do you think that Corey Burkhart, it can target either player with that ability, that enter the battlefield ability?
Yeah, I think Corey's likely going to be targeting himself with the Vendilion Click.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's also worth noting that Sam may only have 1 basic in his deck, so the Field of Ruin may become more powerful.
So what we just saw here is that the Mantis Rider attacked alone, so we did not see that game plan because the Exalted made that Mantis Rider into a 4/4.
Yeah, so it wouldn't trade with the Vendilion Click. So wise play there from Sam, putting himself in a position where he's not giving Corey any favorable trades.
The other thing to consider for this Vendilion Click is that we saw Corey Burkhart keep the card on top for his draw from that Search for Azcanta. So it is also possible that he is not interested in getting rid of that one with his Vendilion Click. Maybe he was also just cognizant of the fact that a random card is harder to cycle than the guaranteed card that's a non-land.
That's true.
It's Search for Azcanta, it's Vendilion Click, it is Detention Sphere, so the Ether Vial is off the battlefield, and we are going to see a target at Sam. We see Thalia's Lieutenant. We have also got access to Thalia herself making an appearance. Another copy of Mantis Rider. Lots of good happening in this deck. This is the kind of deck that's just happy. And what appears to be... Is that Noble Hierarch?
I believe it is a Noble Hierarch,
Or is that Avacyn's Pilgrim?
Oh, it is an Avacyn's Pilgrim. You're right. I'm sorry, I just saw 1 green mana symbol and assumed.
But
it is.
There's 1 Avacyn's Pilgrim in here. All
Sam
right.
playing the 13th 1-drop, putting himself in a position to be 80+% to have a turn 1 play. I like that.
Turn 1 plays are good. They're some of my favorite. Ancient Ziggurat joins the battlefield, and not a whole lot to do, though. We know about a good amount of the cards in hand. There is the potential for, there's Thalia's Lieutenant. Thalia's Lieutenant as a potential play. He's going to go Champion of the Parish to kick things off. He could follow that up with Avacyn's Pilgrim and then a Thalia's Lieutenant. But he's up against 6 open mana. There's just a lot of ways that this can go wrong, Jake.
Yes, there are. And it's also worth noting that at any moment, Terminus coming off the top of Corey's library should put this away.
Yeah, we know that he named the Supreme Verdict with this Meddling Mage, did not name Terminus. There's the Thalia, might be considering that play as a way to maybe just try and slow down the ability to run through multiple iterations of spells in a single turn. We're going to get a +1/+1 counter, and it looks like we're going to go for going as wide as we possibly can. Is this a strategy that is just saying, you know what, if you have Terminus, you have it?
I think so. I think Sam is thinking to himself, I'm at the stage of the game where I can't just be passing the turn. I need to make sure that I'm able to end this game as quickly as possible before I give Corey the opportunity to draw his significantly more powerful cards.
Looks like it's going to be Cryptic Command, eliminating that Thalia's Lieutenant from the stack, so we are not going to see +1/+1 counters across the field. It's an attack in for 4 with this Mantis Rider. Again, not able to get really aggressive because this Vendilion Clique is holding it back. So takes the attack in with just a single creature for 4. A Field of Ruin comes down to the battlefield, could take down that Ancient Ziggurat. We see Sam's already got 2 basics. That's about as many as you ever want in this Humans deck, if that.
Yeah, I think Humans list either play 1 or 2 basics. And from the looks of things, Corey has
quite a few.
The biggest blowout of possible blowouts in hand here.
Does he have?
Settle the Wreckage.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So
I've been loving.
We can expect some wreckage.
Especially when there's no basic lands left. You are just settling for the wreckage that you have made for yourself. It's not even that they're handing you something. You know, there have been plenty of these removal spells throughout time that you remove their creature, but you give them something else. Everything from, Pungify to recently the spacing on the name of it, but you exile it, and if they get rid of it, they get a dinosaur.
Oh, yes. Baffling End.
Thank you, Baffling End. This one, it's going to be giving absolutely nothing to Sam. That is going to be tragic. All right, there's the Thalia's Lieutenant. It is a giant board, and Corey seemingly has no way to stop it. Corey is at 6, though. I wonder if there will be some consideration around the potential of maybe spot removal as opposed to it. You have to balance the potential of Settle the Wreckage as opposed to the potential of just a bunch of spot removal, which means that you want to attack with more creatures. Looks like it's going to be just the Champion of the Parish.
That surprises me. Sam showing off his ability to play around.
Ooh.
Anything and everything.
He smells that Settle the Wreckage.
Oh, yes, he does.
Looks like we're trying to keep some of these pieces back, line it up to where if there's X number of removal spells, can I still get in a good attack? It's going to be these 3, the 2 flyers, as well as this Champion of the Parish. The nice part about this is that it means that if the Vendilion Clique were to block any of the flyers, there is still a lethal attack. And that's actually still the case here. So you have to block the biggest creature. Then it's Settle the Wreckage. You get to hold on to the Vendilion Clique. But Sam actually played around that quite nicely. He's still got a very impressive board. And as far as I know, there's just a Colonnade that is standing in the way of this now. The Vendilion Clique's still around. But how many Settle the Wreckages could he have if you're Sam, you know? Let's transform this Azkan to the Sunken Ruin. I think that was a copy of Opt.
Believe it was.
Ooh.
This is terrifying if you're either player.
Corey is in trouble right now, but with a massive amount of mana, does barely shy of the mana to be able to activate Azcanta and try and find a Terminus. I wonder if he's looking to do, on Sam's turn, a Terminus.
I believe that's what he would like. He would love, love, love to be able to opt into a Terminus right now.
Now, Terminus does cost 6 mana naturally. Is there... Maybe the argument is that rather than going for it sorcery speed and maybe just drawing into the Terminus, this way he can either Miracle it, and if he fails to find anything like that... Ooh, is this Meddling Mage resolving first, too?
I doubt it. I imagine Corey would respond with the opt, at the very least.
I think you have to. That's to the bottom. Let's see it. Terminus. Live the dream. Oh, it's another copy of Opt, but that means that it's no longer the first card that he draws this turn. No second chances at finding that.
Yeah, so Corey may be thinking that he should have opted during his turn, so that he could have had 2 shots at that. He could, however, still activate Azcanta the Sunken Ruin and look for a Cryptic Command, which could tap down all of Sam's cards. Sam, however, now with this Meddling Mage resolving, could name Cryptic Command.
Because now he knows that he doesn't have to worry about Terminus.
That's precisely true.
Another thing, he could have gone for that on the main phase. He could have also potentially found Lyra Dawnbringer or that Baneslayer Angel. He does have both of them in his sideboard if they came in. Could throw down with some of those as some giant life-linking blockers. That would make combat pretty difficult.
Yeah. Of course, opting into a Terminus on your opponent's turn is the coolest thing the deck is capable of doing, and this is a game for fun. And in games for fun, you are trying to maximize how cool the things you're doing are.
It's all about good optics.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and block here. We're going to try and find ourselves... Is this going to be an activation of Celestial Colonnade? So it's a 4/4 and a 3/1, and we are just trying to survive. I think we're just making sure that we paid enough for it. The 1 mana for the opt. All right, I think we're okay. We're going to throw down some blockers there. It does mean that the verdict is now on the table as a potential draw. There's a big hit. Corey's down to 3. Supreme Verdict or Terminus now does it.
Yeah, and a lot of chances here for Corey.
Oh, it is on Cryptic. Okay, so Cryptic Command was the card named with this other Meddling Mage. So that is not one of the answers. He's got this opt in hand. It's his only shot beyond this Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. Interesting consideration of where you want to start, and I think he's making sure to leave up double white mana. Supreme Verdict on the mind.
Yes.
He finds Oust, Opt, and Teferi. Oust is not enough of an answer at the moment, I think.
Yeah, down to 3. No blockers. Remember, not enough mana now for a Celestial Colonnade activation, even if he had one, which he doesn't because it died in combat the previous turn. No
But
more
if
Vendilion Click.
he does have access to both an Opt and an Oust potentially, and he could combine those two. If the Opt is able to find something like a Path to Exile, he could remove 2 creatures. But I think even at that point, he is looking at a guaranteed 3 damage. So instead, he chooses to take the Opt. Maybe try and set up something for next turn and just run it back. Terminus on their turn. Finds the Supreme... There it is! He had the no land drop for the turn. Throws down the basic planes and fires off the Supreme Verdict. The main phase Opt this time. Corey, he picked up on it. He knew what he could have done last turn. He's doing it this turn. Supreme Verdict sweeps that field. And now it is 2 lands and a Thalia. Trying to contend with this board, but with an active Azcanta the Sunken Ruin and now a Cryptic Command and an Opt. You could see how excited he was to throw down that basic plains. Oh, you thought I only had 3 mana? Surprise. Timely Reinforcements, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and a Snapcaster Mage, though he cannot grab the Snapcaster off of this as much as he would love to.
Yeah, Timely Reinforcement's a great way to pad his life total. Being at 3 is somewhat precarious against a deck that plays 3-power Hasty Flyers.
And because of the Thalia, he actually does have fewer creatures as well. And so Timely Reinforcements, a 3-mana sorcery that if you have less life than the opponent, you gain 6 life. If you have less creatures or fewer creatures, then you get 3 1/1s. Fires down both of those for 4 mana because of that Thalia. And now this board is looking solid. even the Thalia can't really attack. There's no green mana. Oh, there's the green mana for the Noble Hierarch. Now the Thalia could attack. It would be a 4/3 with first strike. Even a triple block would not actually get that done to at least trade with it.
We are up.
Oh, was that Baneslayer?
I believe it was.
Yes. Oh, it's Baneslayer. Now you're happy.
I'm the happiest. Protection from dragons.
Stay back, demons and dragons. We've got this board on lock. It's an attack in for 2 right into that Noble Hierarch, which is kind of a pacifist. She's not big into the fighting. She's all about the support role.
When in multiples, though, Noble Hierarch does like the tango.
That's true. I've seen more than one kill out of Infect with the Noble Hierarch.
Yeah.
Let's fire off this Horizon Canopy. We'll find a Cavern of Souls, and it's going to be a Kitesail Freebooter. Let's take a look at what we've got. There is the possibility. Yeah, sure. It's Cryptic or it's Opt. I think Corey's saying, you're taking the Cryptic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine you would want to.
Oh, Baneslayer Angel. Good times.
That nice little 10-point life swings.
Activating that Auscanta the Sunken Ruin just replaces his Cryptic command with another one. A bargain, if you ask me. Draws a card for the turn. This is going to be a swing all out, and now the life total is going to be padded for sure. This is a 5/5. It's got lifelink. It's got flying. Is there more value in a keyword soup than Baneslayer Angel?
And there are definitely more keyword soupy cards, but as far as cards that really made an impact go, I don't think so.
It's Baneslayer.
It's Baneslayer.
It's a bad day to be a Bane here in Detroit.
Yeah.
That's not a sentence I ever expected to say. Path to Exile here eliminates the Kitesail Freebooter. Back up to 2 Cryptics. Corey, he's so mysterious. Fires off this Auscanta the Sunken Ruin. He had a Terminus up top. He's going to take this Path to Exile instead. And there it is. Path to Exile eliminates the Thalia from contention. Now it is a Noble Hierarch and a Vial. There could be anything in that Vial, though.
Yeah, but Sam doesn't have any cards in his hand, so whatever's in that vial comes off the top of the library, and it doesn't have many counters. I know you're joking.
It's an empty bottle, though. An empty bottle and a Noble Hierarch just hanging out. Now it's just the empty bottle.
It does make those Cryptic commands slightly weaker.
And there's that pass. There is the handshake from Sam to Corey Burkhart. Control makes it happen with that timely, well, I guess that came later, but that Supreme Verdict was just perfect timing. Could not have gotten better. And you said before, this blue-white, is this a deck that is really just preying on the humans deck right now?
Yeah, I think it preys on just about everybody. It's really hard to find a deck that has like a positive win percentage against the blue-white deck that is also necessarily a tier 1, if you even consider there to be a tier 1 in Modern deck.
All right, well, that is going to lock it up for the first teams that we were watching here in round 3. But, of course, there is more Magic coming at you. TJ Rogers and Jake Van Lunen, and we will see you soon. Welcome back to Grand Prix Detroit. It's still round 3 here in the venue, and we are going to have the opportunity to check out some time walk magic. So let's head on down to it. And we are kicking things off already in progress. Now you can see Brian Browndoin up against Brandon Panilla. And looking at the top, you can see where these game wins are so far. On the right side of the battlefield, you have got 3 game wins. On the left side, 1 from Ryan Whitsitt. Taking a look at what it is that we're going to have, we see a Serum Visions on the left from Brandon Panilla. Now he is playing what appears to be that blue-white control that everybody is really enjoying right now. And Brian Browndoin with an unplayed territory to kick things off is really just showing what he's on already. This is going to be humans.
Yeah. Now, Brian Browndoin practiced with Clan Ironworks a lot before this tournament. He was poised to be playing that deck. He felt like it might be the best deck in Modern. And then, just before the tournament started, Seth Manfield said, I'd like to play that deck. And Brian, 16th best player in the entire world, said, all right, I'll play humans.
What a team when that 16 next to Brian Brandon's name is the lowest.
Yeah.
Or it's the highest number on his squad.
Yeah, there are only 13 people in the entire world who are ranked higher than him who aren't his teammates.
So it is going to be 2 Ether Vials on the battlefield as of yet. No creatures. And for Brandon over to his side, he's got 2 mana available at the moment. Some beautiful basics, and it's going to be a Glacial Fortress that comes down to the battlefield. Still not a whole lot of action, just the 1 Serum Visions so far.
Yeah, these Ether Vials are particularly strong in a matchup where the opponent has counter magic. However, this is game 2, so it's likely that Brandon has sideboarded all of the cards that are weakest against Ether Vial out of the deck.
You also do have a nice little bit of application against board wipes with the ability to put something in afterward and then start attacking right after.
Absolutely. Being able to put your cards into play at instant speed, super important. Here we see a Sin Collector, also uncounterable thanks to Cavern of Souls.
Yep. And that is going to get Path to Exiled prior. Now, this is a 2-1 that when it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand, you grab an instant or sorcery and exile it. This is not one of the temporary ones, to where if they get rid of it, you get it back, it's gone forever. Now, takes a look at the hand, and now we know what we're building up to. There's 2 more lands, and what's going to be cast with them, a Jace the Mind Sculptor and a Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. The left side of the board is just putting itself together. You know, everything on there does exactly what it looks like.
Brandon has his turn 4 and turn 5 mapped out at this point. It's up to Brian to see what ways in which he could interact with those vials.
Mm-hmm. A vial on 2 and a vial on 1. When you activate those, you can put in a creature from your hand into play with converted mana cost equal to the counters on it. One thing that is kind of a cool little thing about this is that once you activate it and that ability resolves, there is no opportunity to respond to the creature entering. So when you're talking about cards like Meddling Mage, you know, once that's in there, then they can't suddenly make considerations based on what you might name, because it's already there.
And we may even see Brian put a card like Meddling Mage onto the battlefield before Brandon gets his turn, thus making sure that that Jace the Mind Sculptor is not going to come down on the following turn.
Looks like we might have a Kitesail Freebooter in hand, and I wonder if one of the considerations here is maybe waiting until the end of the draw step. He knows pretty much what this hand is mapped out to do, and I think he might just be waiting until post-draw step to see if there's anything better. And it's going to be a land that gets drawn for the turn. So if this Kitesail Freebooter is, it's able to take the Jace. Turn 4, no longer mapped out. Brandon's got this Teferi as his primary game plan. No activation there from the Aether Vial. How do you feel about pump faking them?
Oh, with Vial?
Yeah.
Oh, you always do it, right?
I guess when the opponent actually has no opportunity to interact and you know it, maybe a little bit of a wasted effort.
Yes, but but there are certainly times where you do it.
There is going to be the Meddling Mage.
And Brian knows what he wants to name, I imagine.
I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Although it's worth noting that if he has another card like Kitesail Freebooter, or if he's only really afraid of something like Terminus, that he may not necessarily name Teferi. But most of the time in a situation like this, Brian would want to.
And I just want to clarify something real quick. What we saw there was actually at the upkeep in response to Etherval's triggered ability to add a counter, activated it in response to that, so he was able to put down this Meddling Mage while it still had 2 counters on it, and that's why you don't see any mana tapped for the turn as of yet either.
Yeah, and in doing so, Brian is able to get another 2 casting cost activation off of a Vial. He wants to do this because his hand obviously cluttered with 2s.
Yep. Based on the way that we saw this turn go, I am going to assume that Teferi was in fact the named card at this Meddling Mage. Just passing back the turn is not where you want it to be. We saw Brandon draw a land as well, so options extremely limited. Not even a Colonnade, you know, to at least make it feel like you've got something. There's going to be Thalia's Lieutenant +1/+1 counters to the team. A 3/3 Meddling Mage, a 2/3 Kitesail Freebooter, and this 1/1 is going to start growing anytime a human enters the field.
Yeah, it looks like Brian may have another copy now of the Lieutenant to just really put Brian in a situation where he only has 1 or 2 draw steps to get back into this game.
I love seeing combinations where you play down the Thalia's Lieutenant and then use these Aether Vials to put in another human in response to that ability so that both will get that +1/+1 counter.
Yeah, it's a very useful interaction when you're playing this deck. The Vial giving the ability to play that card at instant speed.
There's the attack in, and this is for 6 currently. Among the first damage that we've really seen, but before damage, it is going to be another copy of Thalia's Lieutenant. That is going to increase the power by 4. Now, the reason why it's 4 rather than 3 is 2 counters will get put onto this Thalia's Lieutenant. It gets 1 for itself whenever another human enters the battlefield. It gets a +1/+1 counter. And 1 from the other Thalia's Lieutenant, which puts that counter onto each other human.
Yeah, so suddenly Brandon finding himself in a situation where he needs to draw something on this turn or just lose.
There is lethal damage on the board right now. 5 mana to cast it with, and that's going to be a handshake. Brian Browndoin is going to lock up the first match. Humans up against blue-white control, able to contend against a deck that's really been looking to take it down. Let's jump into our other match. It is Seth Manfield up against Zane Mitchell. This is going to be that Krark Clan Ironworks on the left side of the battlefield. Aether Vial on 1, Noble Hierarch, 2 Mantis Riders on the right side. We are all tapped out on mana, but we have got 5 colorless mana, 2 red mana, a Scrap Trawler on the battlefield, which means that anytime one of these artifacts is put into the graveyard, you're going to grab another one that has converted mana cost lower, return it to your hand. You're going to see him looping that with something like this Ichorclaw Wellspring, which can get back Chromatic Stars, which can get back Mox Opals. If he has access to anything like that, there's that Mox Opal getting sacrificed, and he is just generating a ladder at this point. Using this Krark Clan Ironworks, you sacrifice these artifacts, you get 2 mana, sacrifice the star, get back the Mox Opal. Well, I bet I can tell you what he's about to do. He can fire down that Mox Opal, sacrifice that one again. But in the meantime, let's go for an Ancient Stirrings. And right now, he is very close to assembling one of these loops that just gets it completely done. With 2 Scrap Trawlers, that might be, I think he needs 1 other piece to fully loop with the Scrap Trawler. I think he needs either a Mirror Retriever or a Krark Clan Ironwork, though this deck has got quite a few loops.
Yeah, I think Seth at this point, especially with that Wellspring on the battlefield and some 1-mana artifacts in the graveyard, it looks like Seth is well above 99% to go off and win this turn.
Even if he doesn't, he's got a Fire Spout in hand. He can just sweep the board and pass.
So now drawing a card off this Ichor Wellspring, then drawing another 2 cards off this pair of stars. Each of those stars going to produce a ton of extra mana off of the Ironworks if he wants them to. Then that colored mana can then be used to cast cards like Ancient Stirrings.
The nice part about Chromatic Star also, when compared to Chromatic Sphere, is that it draws a card just when it's put into the graveyard, not when it's activated, which means that, you know, you can just play the star, sacrifice it for the 2 mana, and you'll still get back the Mox Opal to start generating that colored mana. And you can continue churning through this deck and looking for the other options. We see Engineered Explosives comes down on 1. It's going to sweep the Aether Vial as well as the Noble Hierarch. You know, you got the time. Take a quick little detour to sweep that field. still plenty of mana available. Once we sacrifice this star, we're going to be getting back, you guessed it, Mox Opal.
Yeah, and also worth noting that these stars can actually return the engineered explosives back to hand also.
Correct. And with 2 of these scrap trawlers out, it's going to do just that. Now that he's got access to 2 of these, there's 2 separate instances of that trigger, which means that he is really making it happen right now. There is a chromatic star. He's going to be able to sacrifice this for 2 mana. He's going to get back 2 Mox Opals as well as draw a card. He finds a Pyrite Spellbomb, and I think this game is all but over.
Yeah, and now Seth has more mana than he knows what to do with. The Ironworks that's in his hand represents a ton of cards because it can get back multiple Ichor Wellsprings that will all draw additional cards, which can then each also return multiple chromatic stars, which will all draw extra cards, and a 3rd scrap trawler, plus the Pyrite Spellbomb in hand here for Seth. So the Pyrite Spellbomb will then deal more than enough damage to end this game. And
there's Ichor Wellspring. We're going to go down a little bit of mana. We are going to draw a card off of it. Was that the 4th one?
I believe it is.
All right, we've got 4 scrap trawlers. We've got multiple of these. Lens fire down both of these Mox Opals. That's going to give us 4 mana, 2 access to both a green and a red. Life is good for Seth Manfield right now. This deck is just going off. And if he wins this one, part of the reason why you see Zane Mitchell kind of waiting to just slog through this is that a loss means that his whole team loses. We've already seen Brian Browndoin take down one of his matches. Brad Nelson and Ryan Whitsett, 1-1. There's the Mirror Retriever. That actually is enough to lock this up because that Mirror Retriever is able to get back the Krark Clan Ironworks, and at a certain point, you can start using that Krark Clan Ironworks to sacrifice multiple creatures as mana abilities so that you can start having the Scrap Trawler get the Mirror Retriever, the Mirror Retriever get something else, the Mirror Retriever grab the Krark Clan Ironworks. That is the loop. Seth Manfield is going to take this one down in 2. We've been seeing that quite a bit too. You know, something that you talked about early on in this one was that the teams that are really at that top level are going to rise to the top very quickly in this kind of event. And we're starting to really see that come into place. We see a lot of these top teams coming up and a lot of wins in 2.
Yeah, you don't get buys at a tournament like this. This is a team tournament. So a lot of people would think, oh, well, the best players in the world aren't at as great of an advantage in a tournament like this, but it's actually very much not the case because even if you're able to beat one of these best players in the world in your match, now you have both of your teammates having to beat people who traditionally win over 60% of their matchups. So even winning a whole match, that other team probably still has above 30% to beat you guys.
Which is pretty substantial when you're looking at these kind of stats. So Seth Manfield, now that is going to be another win for him. He's really looking to hold on to that seat as Player of the Year right now. He's 2 points ahead. That race has really been something for the last several weeks.
Yeah, and it's been going back and forth, and these players, all of them are doing well at events, and they're doing well at events over and over and over again. So it's not like the race is stalled out where all of a sudden everybody's kind of like angling to get one finish. No, these players just continue to push themselves further and further ahead of the pack, just trying to take that pole position for that very last moment. And right now, Seth, he's the last one with the baton until the end of this weekend, and we're going to have to see if he can hold on to it.
Yeah, even last week we were able to see Reed Duke put on a really nice performance with that experiment that they did following him throughout the tournament. He made a great run, and then, of course, the next day Seth Manfield top 8 his own Grand Prix just to start accruing some more of those points. This has definitely been a race that is neck and neck.
Yeah, one for the ages.
Absolutely. So how are you feeling about this team element so far, the sideboarding decisions? Are you seeing a lot of the decks that you expected to early on? That Ancient Stirrings, Faithless Looting, Noble Hierarch, and then a blue-white control deck. Is that how things are shaping up in your mind, or have there been some really unusual decks kind of rising up for you?
So I think things are going kind of how we predicted. for the most part, in terms of what we've actually seen. When I was out there walking through the aisles and looking around at what's happening in this Grand Prix, the format is so wide open. There are so many different decks being played. It's really, really exciting to get out there and see, the hidden herbalists that are killing people on turn 3 over in the corner over there and whatnot. But one of the things that has surprised me is how players have chosen to have their Chromatic Star, Chromatic Sphere seat. We were expecting, I think at the beginning of the weekend, before we got here,
Sure.
I think most of us were expecting Clan Ironworks to really be the deck for that seat. That deck has really proven itself to be one of the very best decks in Modern. And instead, we're seeing a lot of Tron decks show up in that seat. And Tron also one of the better decks in Modern, so I think that's one of the major considerations we're seeing from the very best teams in the world, is whether or not they will have somebody playing Urza lands or somebody playing Clan Ironworks in that particular seat.
And maybe this consideration comes down to the expectation. Really heading into this one, blue-white control has been blowing up. And maybe it's a concession to the idea of Tron historic matchup against these control decks, that's really where they're looking to have their favor.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sleeving up Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Power Plant, you are expecting to beat fair decks. If your opponents are playing Burn, if they're playing combo decks, you're not happy with your position. But Tron is an excellent deck for one of these team events because you can run into one of these combo landmines that are out there in the field, and you still have 2 teammates who can pick up the slack and keep you in the tournament. Whereas normally if you're playing Tron in one of these larger events, you run into that ad nauseum player, you run into that infect player, and you find yourself in a really bad spot. This weekend, it's much different because it's a team event and there are 3 matches being played.
So, this is the question that I have seen quite a bit of discussion about, and I don't know where I land on it. Seat placement. There's an A seat, B seat, and C. You will always play in the same spot, so the player who is on seat B will always be in the center. Is there, or have you been a part of trying to really game that to where, maybe you have your control player in the center where they're able to receive assistance from both players? Or you have your fastest player in the center. Is there any level of that in your experience in these team events? I know that you've certainly been some part of some notable teams.
Yeah, so in my experience, having too long a conversation about seat placement is a misuse of resources.
Okay.
I think that, we only have so much brain capital as humans, and you want to be using that brain capital to win matches of Magic, not to decide whose seat might play against what deck more often. There may be more to it than that, but in reality, I think the most important thing in terms of seat consideration is who is sitting next to the people that they're closest friends with. You want people to feel comfortable. If there's a guy on your team who is really close friends with both of you, it doesn't matter if that guy's the worst player on your team, you probably want him sitting in the middle because both other people are going to feel comfortable sitting next to their friend. They're going to want to lean up against them when they draw well or, really help them out when they need it. It's not, any sort of feeling of pride or trying to be better than somebody else. So I think when you're thinking about seat placement, really friendship should be the most important factor there.
That's a fantastic answer. Of course,